Let me be honest with you for a moment. If you are listening to this podcast, there is a very big chance that you already understand English. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not every word, but enough. Enough to follow a conversation, enough to watch a movie or a video, enough to know what people are talking about, and still, when it is your turn to speak, something strange happens. You feel it in your body before you even think about it. A little tension in your chest, a pause that feels longer than it really is. Someone looks at you, waiting for your answer, and suddenly your mind goes blank, or too full at the same time. You know what you want to say. You can feel the idea, but the words do not come out, or they come out wrong, or they come out much slower than you expected. And that moment is uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. Maybe you smile and say something short just to escape. Maybe you stay quiet. Maybe you switch to your native language, if you can. And later, when the moment is gone, you replay everything in your head. You think, why didn't I say that? I knew that word. I know this grammar. And the frustration appears because you are not a beginner. You are not starting from zero. You have invested time. You have studied. You have listened. You have tried to do things the right way. So there is this heavy feeling of tiredness, not physical tiredness, but mental and emotional tiredness. The kind that comes from trying again and again and feeling stuck in the same place. Sometimes it even feels unfair. You see other people speaking English with mistakes, with strange accents, without thinking too much. And you ask yourself, why can they do it and I cannot if I understand more than them? That question hurts more than we admit. And then there is the silence. That specific silence when someone talks to you in English and you take too long to answer. That silence feels loud. It feels like everyone notices it, even if they do not. Inside, you start judging yourself before anyone else can. You think, they probably think I'm not good. Or, they can see I'm nervous. Or worse, they will realize I don't really speak English. Let me be honest. Many people do not fear making mistakes. They fear that the mistake will confirm something they already believe about themselves. You may start thinking, at this point, I should speak better. I shouldn't feel this way anymore. Something is wrong with me. And slowly, without noticing, you stop seeing this as a language problem. You start seeing it as a personal failure. If any of this sounds familiar, I want you to know something very important before we go any further. You are not alone in this, and you are not broken. This feeling, this block, this frustration, it is much more common than you think, and it has a reason, not a technical reason, a human one. And that is what we are going to start unpacking slowly together. So, after living with this frustration for a while, most people arrive at a very logical conclusion. It sounds reasonable, almost obvious. If I understand more English, I will speak better. And because it sounds logical, we rarely question it. We think, maybe I just need more listening, or I need to understand everything before I open my mouth. So we keep preparing. We keep consuming English, videos, podcasts, movies, lessons, and in a way, it feels productive because understanding does improve. But something strange happens. Your comprehension gets better, yes. You understand more accents, more expressions, more situations, and still, when it is time to speak, the same block appears. The same hesitation, the same silence. That is confusing, because if understanding was the missing piece, something should have changed by now. Let me be honest, this belief does not come from nowhere. In school, we are trained to think that first we understand and only later we speak. First we study, then we use. First we prepare, then we act. So when speaking feels hard, the natural reaction is to go back to preparation, to stay in the safe zone. Understanding feels safe because nothing is at risk. No one hears your mistakes. No one interrupts you. You can stop, rewind, think. There is no pressure. Speaking is the opposite. Speaking happens in real time. There is no pause button. You cannot edit your sentence before someone hears it. And suddenly, understanding the language is not enough. You need something else. Here is the part that many people do not want to hear at first. Understanding more English does not automatically create speaking ability. They are connected, yes, but they are not the same skill. You can understand a song without being able to sing it. You can understand a joke without being able to tell it. You can understand a story without being able to retell it. And yet, when it comes to English, we are very hard on ourselves. We think, if I really knew this language, I would speak. But speaking is not proof of knowledge. Speaking is proof of comfort. And comfort does not grow by only staying on the listening side. This does not mean you wasted your time. Not at all. Your understanding is valuable. It is a strong foundation. But a foundation alone is not a house. If you keep waiting until you understand enough, the moment to speak will always feel a little too early. Because the problem was never that you did not understand. The problem is that speaking asks something different from you. It asks you to be present, not perfect. It asks you to act, not analyze. It asks you to accept uncertainty. And that is uncomfortable. So if you have been telling yourself, I just need to understand more, I want you to gently question that thought, not to judge yourself, but to see the situation more clearly. What if the issue is not how much English you know, but how safe you feel using it? That question changes everything. And once you start looking at the problem from that angle, a lot of confusion begins to make sense. So, if understanding is not the real problem, then what is actually happening when you try to speak? Let's slow this down for a moment, because this part is important. When you listen to English, your role is passive. You receive information. Your brain's job is to recognize sounds, connect meaning, and let things pass. Even if you do not understand everything, it is okay. You can still stay relaxed. But speaking changes your role completely. Now, you are not receiving. You are producing. Producing language means making decisions very fast. Which word? Which tense? Which sound? Is this sentence okay? Should I say it differently? And all of this happens in seconds. At the same time, there is another layer. You are not only thinking about the language, you are thinking about yourself using the language. How do I sound? Do I sound confident? Do I sound stupid? So your brain is doing two jobs at once, language and self-protection. And here is something very human. When the brain feels pressure, it does not perform better. It performs safer. This is why in those moments you might suddenly forget words you know very well, or you start translating in your head, or you speak much slower than you do in your native language. It is not because your English disappeared. It is because your brain switched modes. When you feel safe, you act. When you feel observed, you think. And thinking too much blocks flow. You may notice this even in your own language. If you have to speak in public or explain something important, you suddenly become more aware of every word. Speaking stops being automatic. Now imagine doing that in another language. So the problem is not that you cannot speak English. The problem is that you are trying to speak while your system is tense. And tension and fluency do not work well together. Another important distinction is this. Understanding lives in your head. Speaking lives in your body. Understanding is mental. Speaking is physical. Your mouth, your breath, your rhythm, your voice. If your body feels nervous, your speech will feel blocked no matter how much you understand. This is why many learners say, I know the sentence, but I cannot say it. The knowledge is there, but the body is not ready to release it. And again, this is not a personal flaw. It is a natural reaction. Your brain is trying to protect your identity because speaking a new language makes you feel smaller, less intelligent, less yourself, and that is uncomfortable. So instead of acting, you hesitate. Instead of flowing, you control. Instead of speaking, you monitor. And monitoring kills spontaneity. This is also why you may speak better when you are alone, or when you are relaxed, or when no one is really listening. The pressure is gone, so your system allows you to speak. Once you see this, something important happens. You stop asking, what am I missing? And you start asking, what do I need to feel safer speaking? That question does not create anxiety. It creates clarity. And clarity is the first step to moving forward without forcing yourself and without feeling broken. And this is where we need to be very honest, because the real block is not English, and it is not even the brain. The real block is emotional. For many people, speaking English is not just about communication. It feels like a test of intelligence, a test of competence, a test of value. When you speak in your native language, you feel like yourself. You can joke, explain, defend your ideas, show personality. But in English, that version of you feels far away. You may feel simpler, slower, less sharp, and that is scary. So there is a deep fear underneath the silence, the fear of sounding stupid, not making a small mistake, but being perceived as someone who does not know, someone who is not capable. This fear is rarely conscious. You do not wake up thinking, today I am afraid of judgment. It shows up in subtle ways, overthinking, avoiding conversations, waiting for the perfect moment to speak. Perfectionism also plays a big role here. You want your English to sound right before you use it. You want to be sure. You want control, and because you cannot control every sentence in real time, you choose the one thing you can control. Silence. Silence feels safer than speaking imperfectly. Over time, silence becomes a habit, and habits slowly become identity. You start telling yourself, I'm not good at speaking, or I understand, but I'm not a speaker. That story becomes comfortable, even if it hurts. And here is something important. Silence is not laziness. It is not lack of effort. It is protection. For many learners, silence is a shield. If I do not speak, I cannot be judged. If I do not speak, I cannot fail. If I do not speak, I can keep the idea that I am better than I sound, but the cost of that protection is high. Every time you stay silent, the fear gets stronger. The moment feels bigger. The gap between what you know and what you say feels wider, and you start blaming yourself. You think, I just need more confidence. I need to stop being afraid. I need to push myself. But fear does not disappear when you push it. It usually gets louder. What most people need is not pressure. It is permission. Permission to be imperfect. Permission to sound like a learner. Permission to take space, even with broken English. The irony is that fluency does not come from sounding perfect. It comes from allowing yourself to sound human. And until that feels emotionally safe, no amount of understanding will unlock speaking. This is not about fixing yourself. There is nothing to fix. It is about recognizing why the block exists and respecting it instead of fighting it. Because once you stop fighting yourself, something slowly starts to open. If this episode helped you feel a little less alone, you can follow the podcast and come back. And if you know someone who understands English but stays silent, maybe share this with them. Sometimes knowing you're not alone is the first step.